This is Writers Not Writing, the show where you can get to know your favorite writers and soon-to-be favorite writers by listening to them confess to the ways they procrastinate. Thanks for procrastinating with us. I'm Benjamin Gorman, and the quiet guy behind the glass there is Doug the producer. I write novels and collections of poetry and stuff. Doug tries his best to make me sound better. And each week we have a secret word to listen for. If you catch it, you earn the right to take an extra break at the time of your choosing from whatever is stressing you out. From NotAPipePublishing, welcome to Writers Not Writing.
Today's secret word is samurai.
If I take my time.
Before we get to today's interview with the inimitable Fonda Lee, I asked you all to review the show and promised to read some reviews. Author Kesha Ajose Fisher commented on episode 40, "Laura Stanfill is one of my heroes too. This was a wonderful episode." And author Naya R. Hawk said of our episode 43 with Jesse Kwok, "This was an awesome interview of such a cool and inspiring author." Another commenter was not as pleased, and the person left some feedback, which is accurate but not very constructive. He called me an ancient, stupid, bald mayo monkey. All true to varying degrees. I'm not sure what exactly I can do about any of those things, but I am considering making that my new author bio. Thank you to everyone who has left comments, and if you feel so inclined, please give this ancient, stupid, bald mayo monkey a thumbs up or some stars and tell a friend about the show. Your generosity of spirit is greatly appreciated.
If I take
Hail and well met, readers and reviewers. Today's guest is Fonda Lee. Fonda Lee is the author of the epic fantasy Green Bone Saga, consisting of the novels Jade City, Jade War, and Jade Legacy, along with the prequel novella The Jade Setter of Janloon, and a short story collection Jade Shards. She's also the author of the science fiction novels Zero Boxer, Exo, and Crossfire. Her most recent work is the fantasy novella Untethered Sky. Fonda is the winner of the World Fantasy Award, the Locus Award, and a 5-time winner of the Aurora Award, Canada's National Science Fiction and Fantasy Award, and also nominated for the Hugo, all these other awards, as well as multiple finalists. Oh, that's in there. Hugo, Nebula, Oregon Book Award. Her novels have garnered multiple starred reviews and appeared on the Best of the Year list from NPR, Barnes & Noble, Sci-Fi Wire, and others. Jade City has been translated into a dozen languages, named to Time Magazine's top 100 fantasy books of all time, and optioned for television development. She has also written acclaimed short fiction and been an instructor at writing workshops, including Clarion West, Viable Paradise, and Aspen Words. Fonda is a former corporate strategist and black belt martial artist who loves action movies and Eggs Benedict. Born and raised in Canada, she currently resides in the Pacific Northwest, where I live as well. So, Fonda, as folks who watch the show know, we always dress up in costumes, but then we have to explain them for folks who are listening on the podcast. So tell everybody what you chose to wear today.
Well, Ben, I grew up on a steady diet of 80s cartoons. And we're talking, Thundercats, Dino Riders, the original X-Men animated series, and of course, my personal favorite, Ninja Turtles. So I decided that today I would dress up as a Ninja Turtle, my favorite, of course, Raphael. I even brought and of course, listeners can't see this, but I even brought my size with me.
Oh my gosh.
So,
that is so awesome.
I'm in character.
I was a huge TMNT fan myself. The first movie, the one with the really kind of awkward, live action was,
Absolutely.
I was the perfect age. I think I saw it in theaters like 3 times where I would be like, let's go back and see that again. That's the greatest film ever made.
Yeah.
But it didn't have Krang in it. And so I went, I wanted to go. I mean, Donatello was my favorite turtle because he's the nerdy one. But Krang, I feel like, that this costume took some work, but I've got the hair for it. And, ladies, my eyes are down here.
I'm impressed by how you managed to carve out a section of your stomach there.
Yes, exactly. This is, there's some puppetry at work here, but yes, I've got my brain in my stomach, which might be revealing. So I've been so excited to have you on to find out you've got so much going on, and this year you're going to get to do some traveling. Where are you going to get to travel?
So I have a lot of air miles that are coming my way. I actually did some traveling for just family vacation over the holidays. I went to a bucket list location for me, Egypt, and
I have been.
there.
We should compare notes.
We should. It was amazing, and I was expecting certain parts of Egypt to blow me away, like the pyramids and the Sphinx. Like, of course, you've got to hit those. But I was also just not expecting some of the smaller temples and the locales and just the enormous amount of history there to just overwhelm me.
Did you get to go to Luxor when you were
I
there?
did. Yep.
Wasn't that amazing?
It was amazing. And we actually managed to get into Luxor via special permission during the night.
Yes.
So we got to walk around in Luxor when it was all lit up.
Yes,
dark, very
cats
cool.
are running between the giant columns, and you really have been teleported. It's a very cool experience. Yes, highly recommend, folks. And the people of Egypt would love your tourist dollars, so please go to Egypt.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I had a great time there. I've been traveling a ton for my son's sports team as well. He's a very competitive volleyball player, so I've been traveling all over the US for that, including Salt Lake City, Denver, Chicago, and then, of course, book-related stuff. And my most anticipated trip this year has got to be to Spain. I'm going to the Celsius Festival, which I have heard fantastic things about. It's a big book festival, science fiction, fantasy, Mecca convention in Spain in the summer. So I'll be going there.
Where in Spain will that be?
It's on the north coast of Viles.
Okay.
Hope I'm pronouncing
I've
that
only
correct.
been to Barcelona before, and I would love to spend more time in Spain, but it will be warm in the summer. It's gonna be for a Pacific Northwesterner Canadian, it's gonna be a little toasty. But,
bring it on. Get my vitamin D.
Yes, exactly.
Quota
and then you get to do Viable Paradise, which is there's the one place of all these I have never been anywhere near, Martha's Vineyard. I have heard about Martha's Vineyard, but I've never been before. That's going to be really cool.
Yes. Yeah. Martha's, I've been to Viable Paradise as a student way back when, and then went again as a writer in residence, and I'm going back again this year as an instructor. So
cool. That's cool for those writers too, that you're going to be, so you'll be on faculty again?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's, so how many people get into that one?
I believe it's around 20. I can't remember the exact numbers.
So it's a small enough group that you really get to know their work 100%. And get to know them as writers. And that's got to be a really powerful experience for you as a student as well, and now as a faculty member. Absolutely.
It made a big impact on me when I was pre-published. So I went to Viable Paradise the year before my debut novel came out, and it was absolutely confirming for me that this is what I want to do. And I'm surrounded by people who also want to do this. And so to be able to go back and sort of have that experience, but as a more established person in the creative fields is going to be great. And then the other piece place I'm going to be traveling to is Phoenix. I'm going to be at Phoenix Comic-Con in, I believe it's May.
Better May than August for Phoenix.
Yes. For Phoenix.
That will be, sure. I do Comic-Cons, the local ones. We've done LA, but that one will be a lot of fun. They are a kick. Have you done some Comic-Cons before?
I have. I've done Emerald City Comic-Con since it's sort of our regional one. And then I've done a few Denver Fan Expo, and I've definitely done a few others that are slipping my mind at this moment. I know I did one in Texas.
Folks listening, find the Comic-Con because it's, even if you're not into purchasing comic books themselves, which, that's where, my family leaves me behind because I'm rifling through the comic books. But, there's so much, if you're into cosplay, if you're into getting to meet authors and actors and, producers and directors, they're wonderful places. And I think Phoenix will be a kick. That'll be
our local one, Rose City in Portland, has really improved its writing track as well over the last couple of years, and brought in more authors, more signings, more book-related events. So for readers there, that was worth checking out for sure.
Yeah, highly recommend. So, I'm hesitant to get into process, but I did want to ask, when you do the Viable Paradise, how much of that is good for you as a writer in terms of process, and how much of that is learning from folks who've kind of been in the trenches and learned and could say, okay, your debut is coming out, here's what to expect, and that part of the industry?
I would say both, an almost equal amount of benefit. One part is definitely craft related, and being able to sort of hear from established writers how to tackle certain problems that you're going to encounter when you're in the writing process, and even just learning the different ways that different writers approach the writing is often very validating because you realize there is no one right way to write, and whatever works for you is the right way. But then there is also an element of just learning the industry, learning the business side of things, everything from how to start querying to how to deal with editorial conflicts to how to self-promote your books without losing your mind or
Right.
feeling like a shill. All those sorts of elements of the business side of the creative
Yes.
profession is also super valuable. And it's not like you go to school for this stuff. I mean, I know
No.
there are some creative writing MFA programs out there that maybe do include some element of the career education, but I would say the vast majority of writers don't have an education in that.
Yeah.
And going to workshops, finding resources, talking to other writers is the way that you create your own education path.
Yes. And then even then you have to find it out yourself kind of the hard way. But yes, I
Yeah.
remember reading an article in which Douglas Copeland described the launch of one of his books as the calm before the calm. And I found that so
Yes.
helpful because, especially for your debut, you're like, this is going to absolutely change my life. And the next day you're like, that happened.
Yep.
And I get back to work because my life is not radically different yet. It's
Yes.
that process. So yeah, hearing from other writers, especially writers you admire, that yeah, that's the way it works. You write your first book and then you write your next book. And it's it's a process. But yeah, any tips, tricks that folks can offer are so beneficial. And often, I don't know if you've had this experience, you'll learn something 3 years later and you're like, well, I wish I had
Right. Yeah.
that,
Yeah. Yep. And so much of it is, oh yeah, I didn't quite do that the way I wanted to the first time around. And so hopefully get an opportunity to learn from, if not mistakes, regrets or miscalculations or, things that just naturally happen as part of such an unpredictable industry.
Did you find that your in the series, the launches, how were the launch experience? I mean, so folks, if you have not read the Green Bone Saga, it is amazing. It is, when we say top 100 fantasy books of all time, I'm like, yeah, and by all means go up and look up the list and you will go, why is this book here and not, I feel like it should be near the top of the, it is an
Thank you,
amazing
Ben.
series. I love it so much. And I think that, as that series progresses, how did the launches go? Were people kind of catching on after the first one? Like,
Yeah.
holy crap, this is amazing. And, and so it was feeding and building as it went.
It was such an interesting experience because the first book, Jade City, came out to, I'd say, a significant amount of critical acclaim, but it wasn't a big commercial splash when it came out by any means. It came out, it got some recognition within our field and within other fantasy writers and readers, but it definitely didn't make me think, oh yeah, this is it. Like I can, this is the thing that's going to make my career. I'm done. This is, the hype. I was like, okay, I've got another 2 books to write. And I buckled down and was working on those. And then with Jade War, I started to notice some real enthusiasm that was kind of building at almost at like a grassroots level. People started sending me fanfic. They started asking me, a lot of questions about what the next book was going to be and when it was coming out. And I started seeing more people at signings, and then by the time Jade Legacy came out, it definitely felt like there had been this build over the course of the roughly 6 years that it took me to write and launch the series. And by that time, there was a fan base that I could call on. And that was pretty amazing because with the first book, you do feel like you're kind of shouting into the void. I mean, you and your editor, and and the marketing folks at your publisher, they're like, read this book. And you're just trying to push it on people.
Yeah.
And by the time I got to the third book, it felt like people were pulling it and wanting me to get it to them. And so that helped a lot in terms of just feeling like there were readers who were eager to talk about the book so that I didn't have to talk about it quite as much. And that's a very, very sort of satisfying place to be. But it absolutely, I mean, it was a very kind of organic growth thing. And I think it honestly, it came from people on YouTube who are reviewing and talking about it, and reviewers and fan artists and Goodreads reviewers, and it was sort of just an amalgamation of sort of a lot of little things sort of piling up to build
So
build
how
that
do
readership.
you like do the elevator pitch? Because I've been so excited about the series, and all I can like share with people is my enthusiasm because I don't want to diminish it by going, well, it's kind of Sopranos meets the best kung fu movie you've ever seen plus magic. Like,
That's a great pitch.
it's
I wish
so
I
great. Yeah, I mean, how do you describe it to folks? Is that satisfactory elevator pitch?
that's as good as any. I mean, I
Okay, good.
remember
That's what
when
I'm
Jade City
go
came
with.
out, I had pitched it at different times as The Godfather with magic and kung fu.
Yep.
I've also called it my Asian-inspired urban fantasy gangster family saga,
Yeah.
which is a mouthful. I never get those words out in the same order. But yeah, it was not an easy book to pitch, honestly, just because there weren't obvious comps for it.
Right.
And people were like, is this epic fantasy? Is it urban fantasy? It's like modern setting, but it's secondary world, and it's got
Well, and
like
it's not even
guns
like
and
fully
cars, but it
modern.
has
Like it
magic
starts in
jade.
kind of like a 1950,
Yep,
early
like
60s esque,
mid
like,
20th
but it's
century.
not, our world. So it's
Right.
slightly different, but that was one of the things I loved about it is the scope of it. Like, and then I don't know, have you ever met Jessie Kwok? Do you know
Yes,
Jessie?
of course. Yep.
Okay, so she was the one who recommended the series to me. I only read it like a year ago, and she was like, "You have to read this series," and I devoured them straight through. So even like separating the books one from the other, I'm like, "Oh yeah, the first one ends when he dies," and then but the because I devoured them in like days. Like it was just which I highly recommend. Everybody listening to this, you're lucky. They're all out now. Go out and get them all. You get to read them straight through. But she was telling me that one of the things you did for I think it was for the launch of the third, was for people who pre-ordered, you wrote apology letters.
Oh yeah, that was actually a fundraiser. So I believe it was for Locus Magazine, and they had asked me to donate something. And they were like, well, you can donate signed books, which is sort of the obvious thing that authors donate, or
Right.
you could like do something creative, whatever you want. So I had gotten enough readers who shortly after the release of Jade's Legacy would like send me messages threatening to send me therapy bills in like the best of ways, that I was like, oh, I'll write an apology note for anyone who donates like this threshold to Locus Magazine, and people were delighted to actually receive those.
And so I went into the series knowing that, like, which was, it is
Oh,
not a
you were
spoiler at all to
forewarned.
say the deaths in this series are heart-wrenching because you do not pull your punches. Like there are characters, it's kind of like at the end of the first oh gosh, what's the fantasy series Game of Thrones, the first Game of Thrones book, where you're going, there's no way he's going to kill off essentially the protagonist. And there were characters you killed off where I was like, no way. Oh my gosh. So great. So thank you for that bravery. And also, yes,
You're most welcome.
For some of those where they are just heart-wrenching. But it was because the characters were, it wasn't just, oh, this character is the hero and you can't possibly kill the hero. It was this character, you had provided this kind of like insight to, this is what all the other characters don't know that makes them so much more sympathetic. And then to have them, it was heart-wrenching, brilliantly done. I'm getting into process. I shouldn't. I'm straying from the point of the show. So, when you're not, absolutely crushing people's souls this week, what has been pulling you away in terms of pop culture?
Oh gosh. So my favorite distraction right now is the New York Times game Connections. So I think I discovered this a few weeks ago. So and for context, I got onto the Wordle bandwagon when Wordle first became hot. And then I got discouraged because my husband consistently beats me in Wordle. And he's an engineer and I'm an author. So in my mind, I should be crushing this. I don't understand. So I got to a point where I realized, like, wait, a large vocabulary is not necessarily an advantage in Wordle. It is potentially actually a detriment to you in Wordle.
Yeah.
And my husband, being an engineer, has more of like a logic process of elimination
Yeah.
type of mind that works well with Wordle. So at some point when he, I kind of consistently score around a 4 in Wordle, and he's consistently scoring like maybe a 3.3 or something like that. So at some point I rage quit Wordle. And
Yeah.
then and then I think my daughter told me, oh, there's this other game you should try, Connections. So I got onto Connections, and I'm so much better at Connections than Wordle, and to the point where I'm like usually beating my husband, that like now I enjoy Connections quite a lot. So now it's become my morning ritual is playing Connections.
Yes, very similar. Wordle, I thought I'm going to be so great at this.
Right.
4 5s and terrifying 6s, like
Right.
because I'm going, oh, here's this word that I could
Yeah.
toss in there, and I'm like, wait, but would the New York Times use this word? And most of the time it's something that, yeah. So yeah, I totally see that. Our vocabularies actually, infringe on our ability to be successful in that one. Whereas, so my son similarly was the one who said, you've got to try out Connections. And I'm having the same experience you had with your husband, where he consistently beats me. And it is and I'm going, how can you be, he's 20 years old. How can you possibly understand? Yeah, he is good at Connections. So we'll see if I rage quit Connections. But so right now I'm still close enough. But yeah, those are a ton of fun.
Yeah.
Also, the one frustration I have with Connections, though, is it doesn't track in the same way your stuff over time. And, I need that little dopamine of, okay, but generally I'm doing well.
Right.
Connections is like, too bad you got it today, but you're out of luck. It's, So I wonder if there are folks out there who are tracking their own.
Probably.
Yeah. So that they can go, oh, I need something to brag about,
Yeah.
So what about in the news? What's been pulling you away from your work?
Well, this week I have been following the Oscar nominations, and mostly because I've always made it an ambition to try and watch all of the Best Picture nominees, which was easier back when it was only 5 films. Now it's 10, and I rarely now manage to get to all 10 of them before the Oscar.
Yeah, what are you at so far?
Right now I'm at 3, which is pretty bad. I usually get to like at least 6 or 7 of them, but right now I'm at 3. I've still got a little bit of time.
Any from your 3, anything that you think is going to be a dark horse, a surprise contender?
Gosh, I don't know. I mean, I've watched, so the 3 I've watched are Barbie, Killers of the Flower Moon, and Oppenheimer.
Yeah.
I think Oppenheimer is the one to beat. I mean, I'd be very surprised if it doesn't win it. Yeah. But the other ones that I have been meaning to watch are American Fiction, just because,
yes, I mean, it's
so
right.
I know, exactly. Yeah. It feels like a one that I should watch.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And then I many months ago saw a trailer for Past Lives, and I was like, I want to watch that one, and I still haven't managed to watch that one. And
there's
then
the new remake of Frankenstein with
Poor
I have
Things.
not seen it yet, and I am excited.
So I know, like, I've heard good things about Poor Things.
Yeah.
But
so
I haven't.
We'll see if that one
not seen that one yet.
Surprises us. That would be nice. I am I understand the disappointment about Barbie. I mean, it is, clearly the zeitgeist is Barbie, and so and I wonder if they will feel some guilt, but the votes are when they are nominating, they are also casting their vote. They can't respond to the backlash, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I don't. I think there'll be a big fan movement for it, but I don't see it kind of coming out from behind.
Yeah, and I think it speaks to who the voters are. Not only is it disproportionately, old men, but also it's cinephiles.
Right.
Gonna go, this isn't artsy in the same way. This is pop, but it's a great movie. It was a lot of fun.
And Killers of the Flower Moon, I mean, I think Scorsese has been honored enough times that they're probably going to be like, it's not like your best movie.
It's the phenomenon. I'm a big NBA fan, and they'll like winning MVP 3 times in a row is nearly impossible because people just get tired.
Right.
If you're doing well, they're like, man, we want something new now.
Yeah.
So what about what other kinds of like hobby kinds of activities are pulling you away from your work lately?
I don't know time for hobbies anymore, Ben.
Yeah.
That's how it feels at any rate. But when I do get spare time, I do enjoy board games. Board games are probably like my my like escape when I have a free evening.
Yeah.
So my husband and I usually often play, a 2-player game. But I do love like a good meaty strategy board game.
Do you have some 2-player games that you keep coming back to that are like your
Yeah,
game?
yeah, yeah. Yeah. So actually the ones that we go to the most often are like Seven Wonders Duel, which is a game I usually win, so I tend to gravitate towards that one.
Yeah.
And then Undaunted, which I also tend to win,
I
so
don't know
I
that one.
enjoy that one. That's a it's like a World War II themed 2-player game where one side is playing Germany and the other is playing the US, and you have these different um, scenarios that are like based on actual real battles in World War II, and you're trying to strategically control ground. So that was a
Yeah.
fun one. And then one that's dear to my sci-fi writing heart is Race for the Galaxy.
Oh, I don't know that one either.
That's a really fun 2-player strategy card game.
Yeah.
Those ones, and then Carcassonne, which is also a lot of fun, but my husband always wins it, so I try
Yeah,
to.
yeah. Excellent. So part of the point of the show is I want readers to get to know you away from the page. And one Rorschach that I've kind of found is to think about role-playing games. So if you were a Dungeons and Dragons character, what would be your race and class?
So I actually have a D&D character that I'm playing right now in a campaign with some friends. It's been going on for a good long time. And I play a half elf rogue, which is fun because I get to do all the like trickstery, sneaky
Right.
things and all that. And I'm pretty good with like sword wielding and all that. But I don't think that like I would be that personally. It's definitely not a self-insert character because I don't
Yeah.
think I'm like that roguish. I'm not, I think, kind of chaotic and cunning enough for that. So I think if I had to like choose, a particular race, I'd probably be more like a gnome because they're sort of, inventive busybodies that are, always kind of up to something. And so I think I'd make a pretty decent gnome. And then you'd ask like, oh, okay, what class?
Yeah.
And so I initially I was like, oh, monk, because I'm a martial artist.
You're
I've been
actually a
training for
martial
so
artist, right?
long,
Yes.
and
And
like,
now I'm
yeah, I
picturing
like,
the gnome
have
monk,
I,
which is pretty badass.
right. This is pretty badass. And like, would I want to go to like a mystical temple somewhere where I train to be a like total badass? No, monk. Yeah, like I 100% would be. However, I like don't have a huge amount of confidence in myself and like maintaining that level of discipline to become like that much of a spiritual like fighter. So if I had to kind of be maybe a little bit more realistic about my personality, like maybe I think like maybe I could be a monk for a while, but then I might turn into a ranger because I think the sort of work for yourself, be independent mindset works well for me. But I don't know, my camping skills are a little bit subpar, so I need to work on some of that.
So you're the gnome ranger former monk,
Right.
and you are ambushed in the woods by 3 level 1 goblins. I mean, these
Uh-huh.
are, this is, not the big battle. How do you react?
Well, I think I'd have to, do the thing that you're most advised to do when you're like beset with multiple enemies, which is you got to figure out who the leader is and then take them out or intimidate them and get them to back off, and then the others will back off too. So I'm gonna kind of first scan these level 1 goblins. Is there like an obvious goblin that is more clearly the ringleader of this little trio? And then I probably, throw something at him and try and take him down and
And would you
show
go for
myself.
throw something at him, or would you go, I do have these monk skills.
Yeah, yeah.
It's going to be, as a gnome, if you take him out physically hand to hand, that could terrify the other guy. I could see that
Yeah.
being very, very effective.
Yeah. I think I'd have a staff. I definitely have a
Oh,
staff.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have a particular weapon that is your preference as far as in your own martial arts that
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, within my own martial arts training, I really love the straight sword, just because it's so elegant. It's very much a finesse weapon. But to be any good at it probably requires about like 10 years of dedicated study. So
or
like I
more?
love the
Yeah.
weapon, but I wouldn't say I'm like that's that I'm like particularly good at it. But like I like the single-ended staff within Kung Fu. That's probably my second favorite.
Yeah,
Because
which,
it's also good foundational training for spear.
yeah, yeah. Oh, that's and is spear like the straight sword one where to really master it, you're looking at, decades?
I think it's kind of more in the medium range because it's a military weapon.
Right.
So it's, the straight sword, at least in Chinese martial arts, was very much like a gentleman's weapon.
Yeah.
And, the broadsword was like, like the infantryman like weapon. It's a heavy hacking kind of sword. And then the spear was somewhere in between. And
Yeah.
I think, I forget what exactly, there's some saying, but it's something along the lines of, like 1 month to train with the broadsword, a year to train with the spear, 10 years to train with the straight sword, or something along that. I might be getting the exact like numbers incorrect. But yeah, the spear was then sort of a weapon that required a great deal of training and ability, but could still be mastered within sort of like a shorter amount of time than the straight sword.
And I would think a lot of the training would be with a spear because you'd be fighting with others.
Yeah.
How do I use this effectively without killing the people around me?
Right.
As opposed to, a straight sword it's probably going to be one-on-one. It's a dueling
Right.
kind of weapon, right?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, yeah. So I'm now picturing a spear wielding gnome. How long is that
Right.
spear?
Reading well.
Is there like pole vaulting that it becomes part of it as
Yeah.
that's
But I
that's
mean, if I'm
excellent.
a former monk, like now I also love the nunchaku, so I could be like a gnome ranger with nunchaku. That would be kind of
And again, would they be
awesome.
regular, human elf-sized
Right,
nunchucks
right.
or nunchuckas, or would they be
Would they be gnome sized?
gnome-sized?
Yeah.
And I don't know what that would do to their, just the physics of the
Right,
impact.
right.
And yeah, that they might have to be magical as well, which, I think I am loving this character. That would be very cool. So we're going to go to our break, but when we come back, I'm going to ask you what you've been daydreaming about lately.
Oh.
Special announcement time. NotAPipePublishing has always been committed to helping authors and readers find one another. Well, this show, which is all about helping readers get to know writers, just hit a milestone: 10,000 views on YouTube. So to celebrate, instead of charging authors to advertise their books on the show, I'm going to run your ads for free throughout 2024. If you want to make a 30 to 60-second video about your book, let folks know what it's about and where to find it, and don't forget your name and the title. I'll run 1 or 2 of those in our ad spot each week. Just send an MP4 file to the NotAPipe email address in the show notes. Let's fix up some readers and authors into reader relationships. 2024. More readers, more writers, more books.
Hello, my name is Fred Gambino. I've worked in the story industry for 4 decades as a film and game concept artist and a book cover artist. My love of story has led me to write my debut novel, Dark Shepherd, to be published by Newcom Press in May 2024. A fast-paced science fiction action thriller, it opens on the beach, where starships are crashed from orbit in order to break them up. Breel is in charge of several giant dismantling machines, and her job is to further take apart the shattered ships. Semi-freelance, she is one of many teams who work the beach, making money on the load she collects and sends to central processing. But the beach is a difficult place. Subject to misogyny and racism, she is unjustly fired, setting off a sequence of events that leads to her fleeing across the galaxy in the company of a ragtag group of misfits, pursued by agents of the ruthless and politically powerful Church of Second Light for a secret she didn't know she possessed. Only Breel can locate a mysterious rip, a wormhole that will leave humanity vulnerable to an ancient enemy, and only she stands a chance of closing it. Available for pre-order now at www.newcompress.co.uk.
So, Fonda, welcome back. What is something that you have been daydreaming about lately?
Gosh, honestly, I have had my mind kind of occupied by caring for my dog. She's 11, almost 11, and recently got quite sick. So, a lot of vet visits, a lot of expensive medical bills. and a lot of just trying to figure out how to best take care of her. So there's been a lot of time spent researching diet and how to sort of support a pet who's in decline, sort of in last stage of life. So that unfortunately, sadly, has been taken up a lot of my brain space.
I completely understand. We lost a dog this last year, and that, is one of the things I'm sure you've been going through is seeing them behave differently, and they can't tell you,
Right.
if they're in pain, they can't explain things, and so you're making all these judgments,
Yeah.
going,
Yeah.
and it's like, was she really struggling in this way before, or am I
Yeah.
misremembering? That
Yeah.
that is really, really challenging, to kind of navigate that.
Yeah.
And it does get expensive. Whew. Yeah.
It is tough to or know, how she's doing, because dogs are very good at masking their discomfort and their pain. So, there's days when it's like, oh yeah, she's kind of herself, it's great, and we're on the upswing, and then days where it's like, oh no, like this is not great. So, yeah, so that has unfortunately led me down like a path of reading so much stuff online about,
Yeah.
dog illnesses and stuff.
Does she, is yours a dog gets to sleep on the bed household?
No, she's like a medium-sized dog, so she doesn't sleep like on the bed with us, but she does kind of sleep near us. And
See,
the
Evie was a big dog,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
she slept on the bed. And when she could no longer get up on the bed,
yeah,
that was one of those like, oh, do I lift
yeah,
her? How do
yeah,
we make this work for her?
yeah,
But that was a real hard step, knowing I'm pretty sure she wants to be up here, but it might also be painful
yeah,
to get her up here. And, yeah,
yeah,
that's so, and
yeah.
if she's
We're in the
still able to
same
be near
situation
you, and,
too.
remembering I am still bringing this dog a lot of safety and joy, like, but
Yeah,
yeah,
we're in the same
that is
situation
tough.
where she always like jumps up on the sofa next to me, but like she can't get up on the sofa
Right.
anymore. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
not
Yeah,
it's not fun.
that is tough. Um, so, while you are dealing with all of that, which is a lot, what is a career thing that's going on right now that you want readers to know about?
Oh, okay. So I just handed in a book that I've been working on for a little bit. It's a YA fantasy novel. So it's the first time I've gone back to YA in several years. I was writing the Green Bone Saga, but I got approached with a project that I couldn't say no to. So Shannon Lee, the daughter of Bruce Lee, is actually a big fantasy fan, and
And she was already an author. She had written some stuff
right.
before. So
Yeah.
what a wonderful experience to get to work with her. How did that, what was your process with the two of you writing together?
It was interesting because she had sort of um, the basis of a story that was very much inspired by her father's life and his films and some of the story treatments that he had put together for Hollywood back in the day. And she had sort of from that created sort of a foundation for a fantasy story. And then I came in and she, we talked and sort of did some brainstorming. And then I really kind of took the bulk of the drafting process, and then she would send it to her. She would weigh in with ideas and thoughts, and we'd get on these calls and sort of talk about the characters and where the story was going, and then I'd kind of do more revision and then send it back to her. So it was a fun process, one that I've never been through before, because I'm generally a very solitary writer, and that I don't
Mhm.
like to share stuff until it's like at least in pretty decent shape. But this in this case, it was it was it was so fun, because it's basically like I'm writing Bruce Lee fan fiction in a sense,
Right.
right? And like, he had such a huge, enormous impact on me as, an Asian American, as a martial artist, as a storyteller, as a trailblazer, that of course I
Oh,
said yes to working on it. So that is a book called Scroll of Heaven. It's the first book in a duology, and the first volume, I just sent it off, so it will be coming out I believe early 2025. I know publishing timelines are so massively.
Yeah, publishing
It's
timelines.
like-
That would be. If I'm thinking, as a publisher right
Yeah.
now, yeah, that'd be about right.
Yep,
Like
yeah.
you'd want to go spring of 2025. That
Yeah.
would be, yeah. That's I'm so excited about that. And so, was your role? And this, I'm going to make up a new verb. Was your role to YAify it? Like, was that kind of the universe was created, and you had to go, okay, how are we going to make this a YA story within that?
To some extent, but we really sort of aimed at more of that that crossover, so young adult crossover into adult space, because there's really going to be kind of two audiences for this book. The first is obviously just fans of Bruce Lee who,
Right.
Are adults like me who are like, yeah, I want to read a book with like awesome like martial arts tournament fight scenes and like Bruce Lee style, storyline. And so there's going to be sort of the adult readers who already know Bruce Lee. But then there's and this was very important to Shannon, was bringing new readers, like teenagers, kids like my kids' ages. I have two teenagers who aren't that familiar with Bruce Lee. Like they know who he is, but they didn't grow up like watching his movies, and they don't have as much familiarity. So that's really, the reason why we aimed for this YA with a crossover appeal space, was to bring in that new generation of
And did you find
readers.
yourself kind of plumbing some of, I mean, I'm sure Shannon brought this herself as well, but some of Bruce Lee's kind of philosophy? I mean,
Yeah,
the man
absolutely.
was brilliant. Like
Right.
he was just so, and so are you, I do wonder if our readers now who are, 15, 16, 17
Right.
are going to appreciate his philosophy, because the martial arts, if you see it on video, to them, they're going to go, that's computer animated. No human could do that. And so it's not amazing, it's the Matrix. Like, and they won't understand, no, this was a human being doing these things, but his philosophy itself stands the test of time. Like,
Yeah.
and so I think, was that something you tried to incorporate into that universe?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, that was very much why Shannon wanted to do this project, was to do something that her father really did, which was to bring entertainment, but beneath it, there's like a deeper core of philosophy. I mean, he was a student of philosophy.
Yeah.
That was what he studied in university. He was very much interested in the human condition. And what we tried to do with the novel was to make it sort of a fast-paced, actiony, read that would be propulsive, but to really sneak in a lot of the Bruce Lee philosophy into the storyline, and the ideas that are in the story very much come from that.
Yeah, I've seen interviews with him where I was a philosophy major in college. And I would listen to him speak and think, if this were written, I would presume this was crafted over, a year. And he said it off the top of his head. I was just, he spoke like a philosopher writes, but contemporaneously. Yeah, so I think that's a really valuable thing to share with this next generation. So I'm very excited about that. That'll be great. And I teach young people. I will be one of the people saying, you should check this out. That sounds great. So I always ask writers, what is some question, I'm not consistent about actually putting out the poll, but if I were to remember to, what would be your question for a poll for our readers?
Okay, so this is a contentious topic within my own household. So this is why it's the poll, which is anime, dubbed or subbed.
Yes, that one is.
And
where do you fall on that one?
So I fall on the sub. So I prefer subbed because to me, I have no problem reading and hearing. I mean, reading it with the same fluidity as I would listen to something.
Yeah.
So I think that generally subbed preserves the feel of the anime better. And it's the same like when I watch foreign films. I want to hear it in its original language, and I'll read the subtitles. That said, there's differing opinions within even my own household, like I said, because we just got through watching season 2 of Jujutsu Kaisen, and we watched that dubbed because my son prefers it dubbed. Like for him, he's much more of an auditory
Mhm.
person, and so it's easier. He prefers the seamlessness
Yeah.
of having it just dubbed. So I know this is and it varies
Oh
anime to
yeah.
anime, because there's some that are like subbed, I mean dubbed extremely well,
Right.
where like Cowboy Bebop, for example, I think is like dubbed extremely well.
Right.
But then there's others that like do kind of like their dubbing is a little bit more
Well,
questionable.
and run this idea by your son and see what he thinks. I think it has to do to some extent, not with necessarily the genre overall, but
Mhm.
even within the scene. My bias is if it is if it is comedy, I want it to be subbed
Mm,
because nobody ever quite dubs the timing just right, the way an
right.
actor can speak it. And so
Sure.
sometimes the punchline will be revealed too soon or too late. And
Right.
that
Right.
is that, I'm like, oh, you ruined the joke because I read it first, and so my comedies, I want to actually hear it, but yeah, the rest of the time I want to have the feeling, especially like in an action scene. I don't want somebody else to try and who was not engaged in the action, right? In the same way to be trying to inform me. That's another layer of interpretation, and I want that original actor's voice because it carries so much.
Mhm, mhm.
So action, that kind of thing, no way. I don't want it. That can be subbed. I want to hear the original language, but yeah, that's a for me. Is it supposed to be funny? Then don't ruin the joke. So what is in your to read pile now? What are you looking forward to?
Oh, so actually, I have been meaning, I'm going to give you two answers. I've been meaning to read the rest of the Dune series, because I read Dune, the first two books in the Dune series, and the movie, part two of the movie, is coming out right around my birthday. So I have plans to, that's going to be my birthday celebration, is go see Dune 2 in IMAX.
Oh yeah.
And I figure that I should get around to reading the rest of the Dune series. So that's one. And then a while back, I started reading Shogun. And the reason I did that was because I was on a like any samurai story kick. I'm working on a project right now that that's highly influenced by the Chambara like genre and like the works of Kurosawa, and so I started reading Shogun, and I got halfway through, but then I ran out of time on the library,
Oh yeah. It's that
which
which tells you
happens.
something, tells the reader something. It's a tome.
It
It's
is a tome. It's a chonker, and I write chonkers, but this is really a chonker.
and so are the Dune books. You've got a
Yeah,
lot of
I do. I have some
doorstops
big,
coming up.
hence why I think they're on my to read pile, because they've been
Yeah.
too big for me to get to until, I've been waiting for myself to have time, and that seems to not happen with consistency.
Yes.
But
Well,
but yeah, I've been meaning to get to finishing Shogun, because I'm about 2/3 of the way through and had to return to the library, but I'm going to get back. And I got motivated because I saw that there was a trailer for the new Shogun TV series, which
oh, I
is
didn't know
coming out.
that. They've got a new one coming out.
Yeah, coming out in February.
And
And
where is it?
I
Where's that?
think
Is that
it's
where's
on
that made?
I think it's on Hulu. I'm like, when was the
Okay.
last time I watched anything on Hulu? Like,
Yeah, I'll have to check that out. So yeah, that would be right up my alley as well. But the Dune books, when you finish them, I would love to hear what you think, especially
okay.
of the fourth and fifth, because
I hear
some
they
people
get
hate them.
weird.
I think there's real merit, but they do get
Yeah,
very weird.
I've heard
So
that.
the spans of time he's dealing with are so
Right,
large
right,
that it
right.
is, I think people struggle to go, oh, does this relate? It really
Yeah,
does. Some
yeah,
of the stuff's really
yeah,
illustrative, but
yeah.
yeah, I mean the what is it? The fourth is Doom Messiah, I believe. Is that right? No, Children, is it Doom Messiah is the
It's
third? And it spans like 5,000 years in a book.
right,
It's an immense amount of time. So,
right.
but yeah, the I love that series. But like I would read it in college and go, this is my summer. Like
hmm
they are big books. But yes, I think you will enjoy them, and I would love to hear what you think, especially of the fifth, because
Right.
yeah, that one's there could be a poll question about that one someday. That
Oh,
one's highly debatable. So I've added this new question in. to the last few shows, because I'm recognizing that part of the way that our the algorithmic kind of outrage machine works is if people say the most outrageous, just, in many cases, horrific thing, they get the most attention. And then I see these people saying these things and I second guess myself and I'm like, do they actually possibly believe that? Or is it just a way to get a lot of attention, is to say the most appalling off the wall thing? So to either combat that or maybe lean into it, I'm not sure which. What is your hot take that is your most outrageous opinion that's just going to get, have so many people so angry that they're like, I guess I have to read the Green Bone Saga now because I'm so incensed?
I feel like this has already happened to me on several occasions. I remember, at one point, I think I said that like TikTok made me feel like I was crumbling into dust or something like that, and then people got really mad because they thought I was totally totally dunking on TikTok. When
yeah, you can't possibly
really,
have your own opinion about it.
I just feel old. That's all.
Right.
That's all there was to it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I feel like anything can be a hot take these days. Like I could say, I don't like bagels, and someone be like, "What?"
Oh yeah. They would go, you've attacked me personally.
Right. But I think actually probably something that it would be controversial that would get some people up in arms is I don't have really any issue with like Zack Snyder and his movies. Like he gets so much hate, an extraordinary amount of hate. I'm like, yeah, but like I think his movies are fine, honestly. Like they're not always.
Have you seen Rebel Moon yet?
I haven't, and it's on my to watch.
Okay, so Rebel Moon, I think, is one of the reasons he's getting so much hate, and I think part of the problem is, this, I was thinking about you and Zack Snyder. So I think what Zack Snyder misses is a great story. Like he's often going, okay, he's got this really great style.
Right.
I think he would be great for the Green Bone Saga because bullet time would actually be helpful. One of the things that you capture really well is fights in real life don't go on for 20 minutes.
Right.
And so that, he is criticized for overusing bullet time.
Yeah.
But I think because he recognizes a real fight in real life would happen so fast that it wouldn't be particularly cinematic, but we can stretch it out and have a realistic fight, but it can make it dramatic. And I'm like, that would actually, a lot of bullet time would really work in the Green Bone Saga, especially where these people are jade augmented. And so they're moving so fast. I think, he would do a great job with that. So you should call him up and say, I've got the story for you.
Well, if you've got his number, let me know, Ben. Just
I will
reach
go,
out to
this
him.
is what, don't make Rebel Moon, which is just, I think when you see it, you'll go, this is, he's taking from 10,000 things and nothing is particularly original. It's just, here's my style on top of all these things you've seen before. And I'm like, well, that's fine, but it would be so much cooler if he had a genuinely original story to work with. So we'll get him the Green Bone Saga. And we'll say, hey, you've got to be the person to make this. You would do a great job with this, but honor the actual text. Then the challenge would be, because I think he could do the thing, the thing that would be really challenging for a director is to not pull their punches and compromise any of the story. Like, this character has to actually die. And that's going to be really hard for Hollywood.
I think one of the reasons why he gets so much hate is because he doesn't care what the audience wants.
Yeah.
Like, he's a guy who's like, he gets criticized for style over substance, but like, he did things with the DC EU characters that just made fans mad. Like his take on Batman and his take on Superman. People are like, it's too bleak. These aren't the characters. I think he's like butchering the portrayal of Batman, blah, blah, blah. But it's his take. Like it's an adaptation. Yeah. He's a filmmaker. He's a creative. He can take these characters, and so he doesn't really care to like cater to the, the fans who think that Batman is a certain,
which I love, and yet now I'm like, as a fanboy of the Green Bone Saga, I'm like, maybe I don't.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, I can see why certain people like that, but I also think that it's like he gets a disproportionate amount.
Oh yeah. Excellent. Okay, so yeah, but maybe that one is one that I'll toss up there and just go, okay, everybody, Fonda Lee said this. Now you can direct all of your ire.
Oh no, don't do that, please.
So where can listeners find you when you are you're on the socials and stuff?
Well, I am online, my website at fondalee.com. I have an author newsletter that I try to send out not too often, but a few times a year. And on Instagram at fonda.lee. I'm still on that cursed bird app, Twitter X, at Fonda J. Lee.
Yeah. So, but if you're on Instagram, have you gotten into the threads thing yet?
I have not. I'm resisting that with
Yeah.
all of my
power. As a publisher, I have to be on all of them, everywhere, all the time, and it's exhausting. But Threads does not have some of the problems of X, so that is or Twitter. I just called it X. Oh, I feel so like I was fighting that so much. I did not want. Who has a successful brand and says let's replace it with a variable?
Seriously,
I just can't. Boggles my mind. So, so another question I've got for you: who else should I get on this show?
So I think you should reach out to Django Wexler. And the reason I say that is because he's not only another fantastic Pacific Northwest author, but I just read an arc of his new book. So Django is he's written several series, fantasy epics. He's probably best well known for his Flintlock fantasy series, but he has this new book called How to Become the Dark Lord and Die Trying. That's a big departure from his other works because it's comedy, and comedy is like hard to get right in prose.
Yeah,
it's very tricky, but I really enjoyed what he did with that. So I think it comes out. I can't remember exactly when it comes out, but get him on at some point.
Yeah,
around
sounds
when
great.
that book comes
I
out.
really admire. I'll if I have a good joke, I'm like there was a good bit in there once,
right?
But a consistent comedy novel.
Yeah, like a novel too. Like I mean, usually when you think comedy, you're like, okay, a stand-up, or like a bit or a skit or like maybe a half an hour sitcom. So being able to maintain like a comedic tone for 400 pages is. It's not something I'm going to try personally, but have at it.
But the writers who do it well,
great.
I mean, I love Christopher Moore's work.
Yeah,
and he can. But you have to be able to pack it with enough jokes. It's a lot, and just that's I deeply admire. Yeah, so absolutely. So Django Wexler, I will reach out. That'd be wonderful. So before we get to our send-off, there's some folks I have to thank. Thanks to the artist Max Oakland, who reached out and provided one of his songs for our intro song, I Prefer the Dusk. Let Max know you like it by following him on Twitter at Max Oakland with 3 Ds. And thanks to Halisna CCO for their song Kids for the ad break. And if you're in a band and you'd like your song used on the show, I'd love to highlight a listener's work like Max's song, so email me about that. Thanks, as always, to Doug, the producer, for making the show sound good and taking the blame when it doesn't. And I cannot forget to mention, Writers Not Writing is a production of NotAPipePublishing, so please go to NotAPipePublishing.com and check out the amazing books written by writers who didn't procrastinate too much. If you like this show, rate and review it wherever you found it. Please check out the Green Bone Saga. Read them all, like, straight through. You will thank me. They are so great. And then the scroll of what is it, the new one that'll be next year?
Scroll of Heaven. That's next year.
Yeah, so keep an eye out for that as well. Scroll of Heaven next year. And when you read them, rate and review. Even a very short review, single click on that 5th star makes a huge difference to authors. So if you have 3 minutes, make Fonda's day, write that nice review. And for this show as well, smash that like button is this thing that young people say, and it sounds very weird when I say it, but if you could gently tap on the like button for the show an odd number of times, I would appreciate that. Fonda, what is your advice for folks for going into this next week?
Well, I have actually, for multiple reasons that I've already mentioned, been having a hard time carving out writing time. So I just want listeners to know, it's okay to take breaks sometimes. And the creative process has ups and downs. It's definitely not a straight path. So even when you are not writing, maintain some sort of creative routine, whether that's reading a good book or watching a show you've been meaning to watch or brainstorming or journaling. Just keep up your creative routine, even at those times when you need a break from writing.
Yeah, absolutely agree. And don't beat yourself up too much. There is nothing wrong with needing to find some space. And no matter how much you procrastinate, we're still proud of you.
If I take my time,